Something many of us do as neurodivergents is apologize. We say sorry even when we're not sorry. We just say sorry as a reflexive response to something not going right, or feeling or fearing that we're not meeting an expectation, that we're under-delivering, that we've failed somebody in some way, that we haven't attuned to their needs, or we haven't given them the response they want, or we haven't moved fast enough to do what they need. And it's this kind of over-accommodation, this bending over backwards, a fawn type response as a result of complex trauma that we learn from early on. It's a coping strategy. If we can appease people, they won't come at us. If we show remorse and contrition and we acknowledge our mistakes, people are going to treat us with a bit more grace and mercy. That is the hope, at least, for many of us intuitively when we adopt this behavior, this strategy of fawning and people-pleasing. And it is a form of people-pleasing because it's like, I can't necessarily read what people want in any given situation, which is a common struggle for neurodivergents, especially when in the company of neurotypicals. So I'm going to preemptively apologize, even if I don't necessarily think I've done something wrong. It's more so a response to this anxiety that crops up when I fear or anticipate that I might have got something wrong. I don't know that I've necessarily gotten something wrong. In all instances, it might just be this feeling or this wariness or this apprehension that you have, that you've responded with a lack of sensitivity to something they said, or you didn't, get them anticipate their needs the way that they might have wanted. And you're like, okay, I'm going to cross my T's and dot my I's, and I'm going to say sorry. And there are some people who are neurodivergent. When they say sorry, I'm like, why are you saying sorry? And then their response is, oh, sorry, because it's so knee-jerk, it's so reflexive to say sorry that it overrides actual mindful apologizing. It's just this kind of like phrase that you're using instinctively without even thinking about it. And it's problematic for many reasons, one of which is it always confines you to the role of the apologist. You are never in the right, and you start to believe that about yourself if that is the reality that you're living. If you're constantly apologizing for something that you might have done, you don't even necessarily know if you've done something, it's going to be, again, your reflexive response to anything not going right, or you fearing or anticipating that you've done something that's failed somebody in some way or not met their expectation. So you're going to live in this kind of constant crouch mode, anticipating attack, anticipating rejection, failure, criticism, that you're always making a mistake, and you're going to operate from that place of lack of self-assuredness. And you won't have a strong sense of self-efficacy, belief in your ability to show up in the world and be effective and have the desired relationships you desire, or the quality of relationships that you desire, rather. And as a result of that, you're going to show up as self-effacing, not confident, not self-assured. And there are people who are going to take you for a ride, who see that as a weakness, as a flaw to be exploited. There are people in this world who look for weaknesses, and they see that lack of self-assuredness as a lever to be pulled. And sometimes, as a result, we'll end up in relationships or friendships with people who want to exploit our good nature, our desire to second-guess ourselves, to apologize, to always believe ourselves responsible. They go, great. This person can be manipulated into doing what I want them and need them to do. And that's not going to be a majority of people, but that does happen, and it is a result of you projecting an image of yourself that kind of signals to that person that you're an easy target. But more fundamentally, it's that you don't develop a strong sense of self-worth, right? If you're always apologizing and assuming you've done something wrong, how can you stand on the strength of your belief in yourself? Like, there's no strength there because you're always like bending over backwards and going, sorry, I did something wrong, and recoiling and wincing every time you open your mouth because you fear you're going to say and do the wrong thing. It is safe to say that a lot of the times as neurodivergents, we're not going to always meet the expectations of others in our presence, especially if they're neurotypicals, because we think, behave, and communicate in our own unique ways. So it's going to be a given that people aren't going to get us, and there's going to be mistakes, misunderstandings, miscommunications, and it is the onus of both people, or myriad people who are involved, if that's the case, to come to an agreement, find some common ground, overcome that understanding, that miscommunication. Unfortunately, due to the double empathy problem, the onus is always put on the neurodivergent to apologize, make restitution, explain themselves, because the neurotypical doesn't necessarily understand their communication style, their behavior, the way they show up in the world. And they make assumptions, they make judgments, they jump to conclusions about us, about our character, about who we are, about our intentions, rather than asking, rather than exploring, rather than mutually trying to come to agreement about what has happened in that social interaction. And it behooves all of us, including neurotypicals, to make that effort. So we, as neurodivergents, don't feel like we have to default to apology, to shrinking, to cringing, to people-pleasing, because we fear that we're going to be attacked just for showing up as our authentic selves. If you can gradually try to unprogram yourself of that instinct to apologize, bite your tongue, hold it in, and be selective about when you do apologize, when it actually is an act that is meriting contrition or remorse, use it. Otherwise, the apology loses its effectiveness and it serves a function that might do you a disservice. Like I said, signaling to people who are predatory that you're an easy mark. Have you struggled with people-pleasing tendencies? This fawn response, wanting to roll over and show your belly, wanting to apologize even when you haven't done anything wrong, this kind of knee-jerk, reflexive apologizing even before you've thought consciously about whether you've done something wrong because you fear conflict, you fear a negative response, you fear criticism. I would love to hear from you.